At dusk, one evening in an autumn of 1981, I was 18. I was cycling along a Sheffield street. It was getting dark and the wind was blowing, there were leaves everywhere, and I suddenly knew, I just knew it in my bones, that we were going to go through the most unbelievable level of upheaval and change and transformation for human beings on this planet during my lifetime. And I knew that my purpose in this life was to be part of that in the best way that I could muster. No, it didn't even feel like that, really. It wasn't like the best way I could muster. It was just, I just knew I was going to be part of it. I knew I was built. I just knew that I'm built to contribute. And I reckon that's true of, I would even go as far as to say everyone. I reckon this is the time when we're all in it together. We're all in something together. And not that we're all having the same experience at all. No, definitely not. I count myself as very lucky that I still have my job, at least enough to put food on the table. I'm not exactly rolling in it, doing bits of work online. And I miss working with people very much. I miss working with you very much in person. But I'm super glad we do have this online stuff, because there's something about it. It is extraordinary being able to connect with people around the world and offer something. And let's look back, like if we look back at how we got here, how far back do we have to go? I reckon it's a really long way. I would say that the seeds of this, you can trace it at least back to the dawn of agriculture, when we started to parcel up land and we stopped being nomadic tribes roaming around the world, or roaming around the land, and we began to parcel up land and apportion power more to some people than other people, and create lines and borders and ownership. At some point, like, I'm not a great historian, although I have read Sapiens. If you haven't read it, you've got to read that book. But at some point, I don't know what happened to the Romans, but when the Romans started to invade the rest of Europe, first with their armies and then with Christianity. And thank you to Stephen Jenkinson for his extraordinary insight into that process, and another brilliant book for you to read if you haven't read it. The way that Romans wiped out indigenous culture all over the rest of Europe. And then we entered the Dark Ages. So we've had thousands of years of violence just from the Romans, 2,000 years of violence from that. Never mind what went on before. But that was severe, what happened to indigenous cultures from the Roman invasions, both militarily speaking and then culturally speaking, religiously speaking. And then of course, white Europeans expanded around the rest of the world, doing the same thing to other indigenous cultures. And here we are today with one massive backlog of unhealed trauma and undigested horror from all of that cultural, familial and personal slaughter. And we're hurting, like all of us. And I don't think, and it's not just a thought, it's like from my own personal experience of being in positions of power and wielding that power in an unkind or even abusive way. I don't think being in that position is a whole lot better than being the victim of that kind of power over dynamic. I think we're all hurting. We're all hurting, and we're all in the same boat in the sense that something has to change, and it's up to all of us. And I think it's so clear that something has to change. We're up against it now, and the compulsion or the drive to evolve and heal and wake up is unbelievably strong now. Like this, it's like we've put ourselves in a situation where there's no other way other than to change. And isn't that what nature does on this planet? That's the impression I get from the little evolutionary biology that I know, is that when an organism reaches some kind of cul-de-sac, that's when evolution happens, when there's an imperative for it. And right now there's an imperative for us to change. And I don't reckon it's all that fancy. Like, you know, we could talk about fancy spiritual concepts like enlightenment and awakening and blah blah. And I would say I would bring it more down to earth, that there's healing of trauma, intergenerational, cultural trauma that is experienced by every individual in their own way as their own personal trauma. And so it's like, even on that sort of, if we look at the cultural and collective level, the only thing that's needed from each one of us is our own healing. Our own healing. That's all. And that's got a intergenerational, ancestral component to it. It's got a component to it that's simply from your experience with your parents as a child or your caregivers as a child. And it's got a component of it that's from the impact of being in the culture that you grew up. That if you're watching this video, that was almost certainly traumatizing as well, because it created a disconnection from self. And that's really what the essence of trauma is. It's not so much that you got hurt. It's that you got hurt and there was no other way for you to deal with that hurt than to disconnect from yourself. And the sense of disconnection from self, disconnection from other humans, disconnection from nature, and disconnection from what I would call spirit or the source, or when I'm feeling in that mood, I call it the force. I love that concept. And all of that disconnection is something that can be mended little by little with consciously practiced movement and dedication to the moment through embodied presence. For now, we have to work online almost completely. I did do a couple of workshops in September, and I'm not sure about what's to come. None of us are, I guess. But something can happen online. The deep focus work is amazing. That goes so profound. The pathways journeys are great. There's a great support for you to create a real strong practice for yourself that is your own responsibility, where you're not leaning on anybody else for that. And then the workshops that are coming, those are kind of like fuel injections to turbocharge your experience and your practice. All of it offers something through this amazing technology that we have. It's better than nothing. Despite all its limitations, working online, in movement, with each other has really got something. So you can go to the ZeroOne website in 0.1 and have a look at what's on offer there. And seriously, if something is not there that you'd like to see, drop me a line. Tell me what you're looking for, and I'll consider creating it. And then there's also one-to-one coaching. Just drop me a line if you want to have a one-to-one in-depth coaching session or series of sessions looking at your movement practice and how you can apply it to your life. Go well. Don't stay too safe.